without further ado, I'd like to welcome you all to our June event, Adventures in Mentoring. And today we've got some really fantastic speakers lined up for you as well. So I'm Andy Shaw and I am the chair of the South Yorkshire BCS branch. We usually have meetings, usually on the third Thursdays of each month, which this year, because of the pandemic, have all been webinars. However, it's been great sort of seeing people from all over the UK and in some places in previous events. We've even had people from Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland joining in as well. So it's been fantastic. So it's good to see you all online here, and thank you for attending. Just a few sort of house rules. Everyone, just a few sort of house rules. So after each speaker has spoken, you have the opportunity to ask questions as well. We have the code of conduct as well. So please be professional. Please be nice. Anyone who's rude or disrespectful will be ejected from this ejected from the webinar. So be professional, be polite. Anyone who's got any concerns, anything like that, please contact myself. So I'm Andy Shaw. Send me a private message if anyone's got any concerns. Also send me a private message as well, and I'll feed that back up to BCS. But tonight, so they're the house rules as well. Tonight we have some really fantastic speakers on mentoring. So mentoring has been a very important part of my career as well, and I've benefited from mentoring myself. And today so I'm going to talk about my experiences, but before I talk about mine, I've got three fantastic speakers lined up for you. So you've got Ruby Court, who is a technical solutions analyst at Vodafone as well, who's has some fantastic insights into mentoring. We have Olivia Wolfhart from the BCS as well, who is going to talk about her experiences mentoring and the BCS mentoring tool. We've also got Sophie Wendell from Sheffield Digital as well, who's also going to talk about the mentoring scheme Sheffield Digital have done, which looks really fantastic. But before we start presentations, I'd like each of the speakers to introduce a little bit more about themselves as well. So Ruby.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to go first. Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be a part of this event here. I am a senior solutions architect at Vodafone. I've been working in the tech industry for 20 years now. Enjoyed every moment of it. Always within the tech industry, mainly in telecoms. I'm at Vodafone, where I am now. But I'm also the chair of the Vodafone Women in Technology group as well, because I totally believe in inclusion and diversity. And it's such a pleasure to come here and talk about something very interesting that I was involved in, which is the F-Lane mentoring program, which is all about female empowerment and social entrepreneurship. So I'm looking forward to presenting to you very soon, but thank you so much for having me here.
You're very welcome. Olivia?
Hi, my name's Olivia Wolfhart and I work in the membership team at BCS. My background's predominantly in more the sort of education area. So I worked for a few years as a GCSE computing and English teacher, and also spent a while working at a local small charity, working with communities supporting digital skills and online safety. So yeah, I'll be speaking tonight on kind of three things. One is my experience as being a mentee and having a career mentor, but also on the flip side, my experience of being a mentor as well, as a volunteer. And then finally, we'll just talk you through the newly updated BCS Career Mentoring Network online tool.
Awesome. And Sophie?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So I'm Sophie Wendell, and I I work full-time as a software engineer at Zoo Digital, and I also work part-time as the community manager for Sheffield Digital. I've only been a software engineer for 3 years, and I'm self-taught, so kind of unofficial, informal mentoring has been a big part of me developing my own confidence and getting over imposter syndrome. So I have a big kind of personal stake in trying to make sure that people get access to mentoring at all levels, and for a wide range of reasons. And I'll be talking about why we set up the Sheffield Digital Mentoring Scheme and the aims of it, and how we're trying to kind of change the traditional structure, or the matchmaking that's done in mentoring schemes, and try and widen it so that it's more applicable to people in a whole range of scenarios.
Awesome. So without further ado, without further ado, we're going to listen to Ruby's talk first of all as well. So I've been looking forward to your talk for a few weeks now at least. So Ruby, the virtual floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. And just to emphasize, you do a fantastic job with your branch, and thank you for inviting me. It's absolutely okay. I hopefully am presenting my screen to everyone. Does everyone see my screen? Yeah, I'm just going to take it into presentation mode, if you just bear with me for about 2 seconds. Okay, and I've just got to remove everyone that I can see that's over my presentation because of how Zoom works. Okay, 1 second, brilliant. So I'm Ruby Core, as I mentioned, Senior Solutions Architect. So I'm going to explain all about my personal adventure in mentoring, and it focuses on something called corporate social enterprise mentoring. It's a little different to the traditional mentoring, but what it's about is all about how do large organizations help social enterprises. So Vodafone set up a program called the F-Lane program, which is what I'm about to tell you all about my adventure. And believe me, it was an adventure. Okay, so for the audience, I'm sure lots of you have been mentored already, and I'm sure you'll agree it's a fantastic discovery journey that you all go on. Whether it's, I'm just wondering, I can hear some voices, Andy. Did you want to put people onto mute?
Can everyone who's not talking please unmute? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Unless anyone wants to ask a question straight away, please do. So the mentor and mentee journey is absolutely wonderful because it's a wonderful journey, as I put it, of discovery. Whether you're the mentor or the mentee, you have been on a fantastic journey where you are learning, you are growing, you find advice, you find that wonderful support network, and it's trusted as well. And it can help with your career development, your personal development, your professional development. So it definitely helps in terms of development. And there's also the help in direction. Which avenue should you take in your life? Which way should you go? And mentoring really helps that. And it's a commitment between you and the mentee there. So it's absolutely wonderful. The schemes are absolutely wonderful out there. Now, to me, I've got 4 different types of mentoring up on the screen there. But I think there's another one, and I'm going to concentrate mainly on the last one. But just very quickly, reciprocal mentoring is all about having usually a senior mentor with a more junior mentee. But you can have what we call reverse mentoring, which is when we get, especially in Vodafone, we have young graduates that actually do mentor senior executives. And they teach them all things like, the digital know-how, social media, lots of information is exchanged, and it's a wonderful collaboration between senior and junior. The second one, peer-to-peer mentoring, is often when, for example, I work in technology and my mentor could work in finance, and I actually learn a lot more about the finance area, or I could learn about sales, or I could learn about the digital area in Vodafone. So peer-to-peer mentoring is great. It also works in many contexts as well. The other one is group mentoring, which is becoming really common nowadays, I've heard. Some people feel a little intimidated when it's a one-on-one and don't feel as though they can have the bravery to ask questions with their mentor. So group mentoring, we found in Vodafone, is really good during when we've got graduates or when we've got interns or when we've got placement students. They really like being in a group because they can exchange ideas and get the full benefit of mentoring. Now, the final one I'm going to talk about is actually corporate social enterprise mentoring. And as I mentioned earlier, it's all about how can large organizations like Vodafone actually help social impact businesses in a win-win situation for all parties concerned. And we had a program put together and it was called the F-Lane program. And to me, it's a bit of a mix of the group mentoring and the peer-to-peer mentoring, because the cohort is really important when you do an accelerator for social enterprise. So very quickly, what was the F-Lane program? Well, it was a 5-week accelerator program with female founders or entrepreneurs. We had a focus on inclusion. And each of these entrepreneurs had to have a digital solution for female empowerment. And it was not UK based, it was actually worldwide based. So you'll hear about some of the wonderful solutions they came up with. And it was also part of what we call the Vodafone Institute for Society and Communications, and with the Unis Social Business. Now, those are the people that actually did run the program, and they were the facilitators of the program. So if you've not heard of the Vodafone Institute for Communications and Society, they are a think tank, and where they work is at the intersection of technology, communications and society. They've got some great papers that they write, which are very much about sustainability, diversity, and all about the ethics of technology. So they were the Vodafone part of this program, and they supplied the mentors. And the Unis part was, if you've not heard of the Unis Social Business, they specialize in social entrepreneur impactfulness. So they supplied what we call the entrepreneurs for the program. And so both the Vodafone Institute and the Unis Social Business were the facilitators of the program. So who were the entrepreneurs? There were 9 entrepreneurs that were selected, and they were selected worldwide. They weren't just selected just from one continent or from the UK. They were actually from 4 continents, which was very, very interesting. And they were whittled down from a group of about 2,000 entrepreneurs. And each of them had to have a female focus in terms of what they were doing. So you'd got entrepreneurs that looked at female taxi rides in countries like Pakistan, where it's highly unsafe for females to ride in taxis. And you also had some businesses which focused on things like microfinancing and micro-lending of finance to rural families in Africa towards the females. So it's group lending. And there were some other ones to do with autism, building an app for autism, and any other neurodiversity application. So they were very varied, and they were each matched with a mentor. And there's me there. Now, these were the Vodafone mentors. And what was really interesting, none of us knew each other. We all just applied, we all just got interviewed, and we all got selected. And we were across the whole of Vodafone. I was in the technology division. Some people came from the finance area, some people were lawyers, some people were patent attorneys. So we had quite a diversity within the cohort. And it was very important we used the word cohort all the time, because it was never a case of total one-on-one mentoring with your entrepreneur. You would always feed back and be part of a cohort. And what we also had were 20 topic mentors, which I'll come on to a little later, who were very important during the whole mentoring process. So how did it actually work? The first thing that we needed to do was to have mutual benefits between Vodafone and the entrepreneurs. And the common purpose that we had, we were all trying to connect for a better future by enabling inclusive and sustainable digital societies. And the benefits that we got in both of us aligning to this purpose was that the entrepreneurs got access to industry expertise. They got insights into international ecosystems, which they wouldn't have had before. And they were also able to build a community to accelerate their change for their entrepreneurship. And the biggest thing was that they're creating social impact all the time. And what did Vodafone get out of this? Well, each of us were passionate about helping a social business. So we were going to be living out those personal values and the purpose of Vodafone. We would also share expertise with topic mentors. So we were gaining our own expertise. And with this access to a network, we were growing our network, which was really good in career development. And all of us were absolutely empowered for this female entrepreneurship cause. So those were the mutual benefits that would come about this program. So how did the program work? Well, it was an accelerator, which was very intense. It lasted 5 weeks, and every week for two weeks in the week, everyone would give up the whole day. And this was done all alongside the day job as well, by the way. So there you'll see, this was the journey. And week 1, the entrepreneurs were going to have a real deep dive into purpose. Week 2, it was all about growth and marketing about their business. Week 3 was an intense session all about product strategy. Then we had finance, investment, and finally digital technology. And at the end, we had a big jamboree that we brought everyone together. You know, what have we learned? How have we grown? What have we been able to produce at the end of this? So it actually wasn't so much what you physically produce at the end of this, because this wasn't just about technology. This was about growing your business with having the right instruments, like knowledge about growth and marketing, product strategy, etc. So how did we go about this? Now, I was paired with a fantastic entrepreneur called Roshio, and she led a business called BCS, which is Swahili for Products Now. And they were a microfinancing group lending company which targeted rural women in Kenya with sustainable products. Like you can see there is the lamps, the solar lamps, the water butt, the gas cookers, because in Africa, rural Africa, most of these products don't get delivered door to door. And what happens is women, who are the main breadwinners in these rural societies, they actually have to do like the cooking, the cleaning, you know, in non-sustainable kind of environments where it's open fire cooking. It's about the children can't learn because they have no lamps to help them study, etc. So I was so pleased to be involved in this program where I would be mentoring the BCS co-founder in this project, which was absolutely exciting because when I work in Vodafone, my day job is nowhere close to helping the people in Africa at all. So this was a fantastic opportunity to help mentor, to help grow the business, which is BCS. So how it actually worked with the 5 weeks. Every 2 weeks, as I mentioned, every 2 days in the 2 weeks, there was intensive mentoring with the topic mentor, with the entrepreneur. And we as the lead mentors would sit in and listen carefully and help the entrepreneur during the journey, where there was this exchange of information. Am I doing the right thing? Could I adapt my business towards a different growth market, depending on what the topic expert was telling them? So our role was very much overall making sure that the strategic alignment was there, making sure that the entrepreneur felt they were okay during the whole process in terms of whether it was the needs of any sort that they needed to know. In fact, my next slide actually explains what we actually did. So we were there to keep the entrepreneur on track. We were there to use what we call a non-consulting approach. That means we don't give answers. We don't give answers ourselves. Instead, we give the tools and not the solutions to what the business problems are, after the entrepreneur has had this intense acceleration of information from the topic mentors. So we push for answers, but we don't give those answers. And we're always there to give the big picture, Because if you're an entrepreneur, you absolutely, and this is what we learned, you live and breathe your business 24/7. It's your life, and you really have to make sure you're focused all the time. But when you're in an accelerator, there's so much information you're given, and we're trying to make sure as mentors that the entrepreneurs stay on topic, they stay on track all the time, because it's very easy to lose faith in terms of the acceleration of how things are working. One of the things I found really interesting was this mentor cohort feedback. So anytime we had a session with the topic mentors and the entrepreneurs, we would always feed back to the cohort of other lead mentors. And what we'd do there, we would get back and we would talk about what are the red flags, what are the green flags these entrepreneurs are telling us? Are there any synergies? How can we help them in any way? And we were there always as a critical friend to be able to listen to what they're saying and assist them with their business in any way. We didn't come up with solutions. That's exactly what some people think we're there to do. We weren't. We were there as a critical friend. We were there to align their vision and their purpose always, and also use this idea of keeping them on track all the time. And believe me, it was a very intensive 5 weeks for us as lead mentors to go on that journey. We began breathing and living their business totally with them. And it was just such a privilege to be a part of that. That's the first thing I'll say. So I'm just going to round off by telling you what I actually got out of this lead mentoring adventure. It, was totally a learning experience for me. I've never worked with entrepreneurs before. I've never worked with startups. And I immediately began to see, well, I need to build up trust. Okay, trust with the entrepreneur. I need to build up trust with the cohort as well. So this cohort, this wonderful network of another 8 people who I can lean on for information, or lean on them for telling me that I'm not using the right techniques to assist my entrepreneur, my startup, they were always there, and wonderful network to lean on. I definitely learned about diplomacy and empathy during the process. Diplomacy is very important to an entrepreneur because they live and breathe. They can get quite ratty when you tell them about something that they don't want to hear about their business. Totally different from a corporate lifestyle. So diplomacy, empathy, standing in their shoes, seeing things from their point of view, so important. And I also had to play devil's advocate a lot of the time. Actually see the other side, where the rose path that they sometimes saw could not be the way that they wanted it to go, because I had the overall view all the time of bringing things together. I think being devil's advocate is always good. And the other things that I learned, that it's always good to do a whole lot of reflection and feedback. We had something called the feedback loop, where I talked about the red flags and the green flags. As soon as you start to articulate those, it's really good, because then it focuses the entrepreneur on what the things are that are going wrong or are going right straight away. Sometimes they don't like to hear that information, but that's the way it rolled much of the time. And for myself also, I love the fact that I was gaining such new knowledge of how entrepreneur accelerators actually work. I had no idea, as I say, I've never worked with entrepreneurs or been on an accelerator path myself, or any funding cycles that startups go on. So that was a huge amount of information that I was absorbing and learning, and showing empathy and diplomacy to help fulfill. And the greatest thing that I think, well, the penultimate great thing, was that I know that I was making a difference to society. Even having that tiny, tiny little window into the opportunity of BCS, the company I was involved in, getting to know the culture of the women in Africa, getting to know how people in poverty live to be able to sustain their lives, was absolutely a privilege for me to be able to do that. And it's all about, just as the BCS is all about, how do you make technology good for society? How do we have social impact in terms of what we are doing? So I absolutely love that bit. And almost to end, I am in a huge admiration for all of those entrepreneurs out there. If people are out there in the audience, huge admiration for you. It's bravery that takes people to those levels. And what we enjoyed most of all in the whole cohort, in the whole intensive 5-week session, was that we had fun doing it. And that's why I say mentoring is such an adventure and it's such fun. And that is my experience in mentoring. I'm going to say thank you so much for listening. I've probably gone over time, but happy to take questions if there are any.
Cool. Yeah, fantastic presentation, Ruby.
You're welcome.
Fantastic presentation. So does anyone have any questions for Ruby at all? Please feel free to ask away.
No, nearly heard one.
Actually, I've got one.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. I mean, you can either ask away or please feel free to write a question. So I was going to say the organisation that you was mentoring, since you've mentored, how have they developed since mentoring, and do you have any plans to work alongside them again, just out of interest?
I haven't absolutely been in contact with them, to be honest, since the mentoring experience. It's something probably because we were in the midst of lockdown as well, and I know that their business has had to take a different course.
Yeah,
I absolutely I need to stay in touch with them. That's failure on my part to stay in touch, and I watch their story still through LinkedIn. I watch it develop. I know that they're growing. I know that when I was involved with them, they had a wonderful roadmap of different things that they were going to do. So that gave me so much confidence that things will begin to materialize, things will happen. So thank you for reminding me, Andy. I need to do more to stay in touch with the entrepreneurs. And the last thing I was going to say was, and I'll say it again, it was such a privilege to work with BCS, the incredible social impact work that they are doing for the starving, for the rural lives of women in Africa. That's where my heart is. So good on them.
Awesome.
I also have a question, if that's okay.
Sure, Olivia.
Thanks. So you said at the beginning that sort of the day job that you do is quite distinct from the project that you were mentoring. And then at the end, you shared a lot of the things that you kind of learned and that came out of it. So I was just wondering if in any way that experience has impacted any of the ways that you work in your day job at all, and if you've been able to kind of take any of those learnings from that project into your day job.
Great question, Olivia. Brilliant question. Yes, is the answer. Is a very short answer. I do. I take back, especially this thing about red flags and green flags. Actually getting to know what those are straight away after any kind of sprint work we do, any kind of project work in terms of just seeing what are those things that are stopping us from doing what we want to do. So that is a very practical example, okay? The other thing that always did, and I bore my team rigid about it, was keep on telling them about the FLAME program. I tell them about how it was, what it did, because next year it'll run again. We were batch 5 and it may run again. And people are so excited by the whole program that you're there to help female empowerment. This is your ticket. This is your roadmap to help people who really feel that inclusivity, that diversity, that knowledge that you want to do something good, but you don't know where to start. And this is large corporate talking to small businesses, saying we can align here on social impact. We can do something to help build a far better connected society. So, and also just a plug for the Vodafone Institute of Communications and Society. Fantastic resources are held there, absolutely fantastic. They're asking the big questions about the ethics of technology and how do we impact the world. So great resource, and I'm giving them a big plug as well. Great question,
That's
Olivia,
great.
thank
Thanks.
You. Does anyone have any further questions for Ruby at this stage at all?
No, I don't think they do.
No, we're dead.
We can always ask questions at the very end as well.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you for your presentation. And next we have Olivia Wolfhart from the BCS, we're looking forward to your presentation as well. So Olivia, the virtual floor is now yours.
Thanks very much, Andy. Just checking that you can see the slides up on the screen there. Yeah, great stuff. Thank you. So I think I already mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm going to cover 3 kind of key areas today. So one is my experience as a mentee, and I'll talk about why I decided to find a mentor for myself at this stage in my career, how I went about finding one, and what I gained from that relationship. Then I'll speak about my experience of being a mentor, which is slightly different, not career-based, but more sort of voluntary work supporting a local charity. But I'll mention about what that involved and some of the outcomes as well. And then lastly, just to give you a quick overview of the updated BCS Career Mentoring Network service and how members can get involved with that. So first of all, let's talk about why I found, why I decided to look for and find a mentor. So it was around this time last year, actually, and I'd been with BCS in the role that I'm in now for about 6 months. So obviously we were sort of deep into lockdown, and we'd pivoted a lot of our projects, and work was extremely full on. And I was sort of aware in the back of my mind that, you know, I was very busy with work, but if I didn't make the time to consider my future, my CPD and all of that kind of stuff, that it was going to be put on the back burner for, I mean, we've been in this situation now 18 months. So I knew if I didn't make the time to do it then, you know, then was as good a time as any. And coincidentally, I'm a member of an online network called MemberWise, which is sort of a membership association for people who work in membership associations. And they sent out a newsletter and mentioned that they'd just started an online career mentoring network. So I had to look at that, spent a bit of time setting up a profile, and had to look around at who might be a good fit for me. I made a list of the top 3, and I just started from who I felt was the best match for me. And luckily she came back to me straight away. We had an initial chat about what I kind of wanted to get out of the relationship, why I was looking for a mentor, and we agreed that we probably did make a good match. So we started by sort of setting up some ground rules, deciding, you know, how often we were going to speak to each other, what kind of methods we were going to use, and things like that, and just covered off the basics really. And I guess really I just felt the need for some guidance regarding how my career could progress within the realm of the membership organization, and having returned to the industry after taking a bit of a break and working in the charity sector as well. So the types of things that I was thinking we would work on would be sort of a bit of a skills gap analysis, and career progression planning, and identifying some CPD activities and sort of practical things that I could do to advance my career. And also the sort of accountability that there was someone there who I was going to speak to once a month or however often, that was going to be making sure that I was doing these things as well. Because as I said at the beginning, you know, I was so busy with work that I thought I need to make sure that I'm making the time for this. And having a mentor is in a way going to make sure that I do it, because they're holding me accountable. They're supporting me with their giving up their time. And so, you know, I've got to keep up my end of the bargain. And if I agree to research something or check something out or learn something, then there's someone there to make sure that I do. So that was kind of where we started from. And where it went initially was quite different to that. So between myself and my mentor, we agreed the initial approach we would take, which was less about the role that I'm doing and the organization that I'm in, but kind of stripping all that away, and just focusing on the types of things that I enjoy, what I find rewarding, and what sort of drives me, what I really feel like is my sort of purpose at work. And then we started asking questions around, you know, would I be for example, willing to take a brand new course of action and retrain in something and start something completely new over again? And if so, what might that look like? What would that be in? What types of organizations, is the mission of the organization something that's very important to me, versus the actual role I was doing? So the balance of that kind of side of things as well. We reflected on my current role, what my strengths are and areas for development are as well. And then thought about where I might see myself heading, and looking at different roles and different types of things that I might aspire to, the types of sort of skills, knowledge and behaviors that would be needed in those types of roles, and do a bit of a gap analysis, and then look at how I could kind of take action and develop myself. And I think it's funny because I wasn't expecting to go right back to basics and kind of strip everything away and start, really from the beginning of what my purpose is and what my values are and what drives me. And in a way, I'm really glad that we did that, because some of the questions that she asked me, I kind of come back to quite often and sort of think, okay, I remember we talked about this right at the beginning, and have I, what is my view on that? Have I changed my mind? Where am I sitting with these fundamental questions that I think sometimes, well, personally anyway, I kind of get caught up in the day-to-day, in the current situation, but to step back and kind of look at the bigger picture of things, I think is something that I've really taken away from this relationship. And obviously there's loads of different ways that you can approach the mentor-mentee relationship, and for some people it might be more focused around if someone has got a specific role or a specific goal in mind, or perhaps how you move to different areas of the business. And so obviously everyone's going to approach it in kind of a different way, but I'm really glad that we did it in this way. Like I said, I spent a lot of time kind of reflecting on those fundamental questions that we talked about right at the beginning, and I've changed my mind a few times on these types of things, but I think it's just really important to reflect. And I think as well, because of COVID and all of the situation with that, has caused everyone to kind of reflect on what's important to them as well. So I think it was a really good timing that we sort of were having those discussions then. And so ultimately, basically what happened was we looked at all these different roles and different types of work that I could be doing, and identified one particular area called social innovation, which is sort of, and BCS does this very well, making IT good for society. It's all about how you can sort of improve the welfare of communities and society as a whole. And that's something that I feel very strongly about and I'm really interested in. And there's actually an organization called the Social Innovation Academy. They have a lot of really great resources online, some online training, some research and things like that, which is really, really good. So I've been sort of delving into that as and when I have time. And just recently, actually, I've had my sort of annual career progression development, and was able to kind of speak to my line manager about this mentor relationship that I'd had, about the types of things that we discussed, what we'd uncovered and what my interests were, in a really concrete way, that I felt really confident speaking about it, because I'd really given it the thought and I'd really given it the research, and so it's been really, really beneficial to be able to articulate that to my organization and say, this is where I'd like to see my future going, and this is kind of the research and the thinking behind it. So that's how my sort of mentor relationship went. And now my experience as being a mentor myself, so that's slightly different because this wasn't career focused, but I volunteered with a local charity as a youth mentor for a year a couple of years ago. And the charity supported young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and I mentored a 16-year-old for 1 hour a week for the whole year. And part of the reason I did that is because as an ex-teacher, I really missed having that kind of interaction with young people and feeling like you're being able to sort of support them and nurture them through that really sort of key transition period in their lives. So when this opportunity came up, I absolutely jumped at it. And So at the beginning, it was similar sort of process. So we did a bit of goal setting, and it was mainly around things like relationships with friends and family, some things around education, some goals for getting into sixth form, for example, and to start some sort of part-time employment. And we reviewed these goals quarterly and sort of looked at different steps that we might take to get there. And to be honest with you, some of the key elements in this relationship was just for me to be someone there to listen, someone to show up, be dependable, be reliable, and to provide advice where appropriate. But it was more about the listening and in a way, sort of a coaching relationship as well, to support them with their education and their employment. So I was also able to offer some sort of practical support as well. So that was more around booking and attending open days for college. So helping them with searching for jobs, filling in job applications and things like this. And the year definitely had its ups and downs. So overall, though, we did complete the year in a really good position. So the young person was able to secure a place at a small local college that supports young people who do have additional learning and behavioural needs, which is was quite an oversubscribed and difficult sort of college to gain access to. So we felt really proud that she was able to gain a place there, and also to secure a part-time employment position by the end of the year as well. So I definitely felt like we kind of rounded off the year in a really good place. And like I said, the main reason I did this was just to support the young person, but there definitely were, as Ruby highlighted in hers as well, some secondary benefits for myself. So it was a really good opportunity for me to develop my communication and interpersonal skills, having been used to working with young people, but more obviously from teaching in sort of a group setting. And teaching is almost a communication method in itself, but this was quite different in terms of a one-to-one long-term relationship. So definitely you know, my listening skills, coaching skills and things like this, and was overall just a very rewarding experience. So although it's slightly different to sort of career and business stuff, I think worthwhile mentioning because it was a really good opportunity, and I think we both got a lot out of it. And then the final thing I just want to move on to is the BCS Career Mentoring Network. And I'm not sure how many people on the call this evening are aware of the network or maybe have used it in the past, but we've actually done a little bit of work to improve it. So the service was first created back in 2014. It was a bit of development that we did in-house. And we recently have had the opportunity to do a full sort of user experience review on the tool. I think we all felt that it wasn't the most user-friendly member benefit that we had. And so we grabbed the opportunity to make some changes to it and worked very closely with the marketing team and the UX team to do that. It's very similar to the network that I mentioned at the beginning that are used for MemberWise. And Andy, I've sent you the slides so you can share them afterwards. There's a couple of links in here. There's a video that will walk you through how to kind of sign up and use the system. But if I just show you a couple of screenshots so you can see inside it. So on the left-hand side there, that's how a profile would look. You can sign up as a mentor or a mentee, or you can be both in the system. And you just need to complete a few bits of information. So you can see there a little bit of information about your job, what you're looking for in a mentor or a mentee, and just a little bit of background about yourself. And once you've completed that, it will allow you to carry out a search for someone based on the similar criteria that you've kind of filled in. So the screenshot on the right-hand side shows you the types of search criteria that we have in the system. And it is just a matching tool. So what we haven't done at this stage is any further development other than just the user experience and user friendliness of the tool. We haven't built in any extra functionality or made any adaptations really to how the system fundamentally works. So it is a case of searching for someone, having a chat with them, seeing if they're a good match for you, and then taking that relationship offline, and whether it's Zoom or Teams, or hopefully at some point back in coffee shops and offices and face to face, should you wish to. And the frequency and the types of things that you discuss are obviously totally open and individual to each relationship to decide. But we are hoping that there will be some resource and scope a little bit further down the line to add some additional functionality and perhaps some different features that will improve the way that this works as well. And I think from what Sophie was saying in her introduction right at the beginning, is that maybe it would actually be very interesting for us to chat together, because I'm sure you've probably got some great ideas from your experience as well, of how this could serve our members better. So we could maybe connect later down the line offline as well. But just the last thing to mention is that something new that we have done for this round of the mentoring network is created a mentor handbook. So this is designed with first-time mentors in mind, really, although obviously anyone can use it. But it's just got a few resources in there to kind of support people in getting to grips with being a mentor, a career mentor. So there's things in there around the fundamentals of mentoring and setting up a good relationship, how to run sessions. And then there's also a few resource sheets right at the end as well, sort of activity sheets, worksheets that mentors and mentees can use together to sort of guide their goal setting and sort of the initial discussions that they might have. So this is all in My BCS, which is the member secure area, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But Andy could circulate the slides after, so you can access all of the links as well, in case, you know, that's of interest to you. But we're always in need of mentors to join, of course, because we've got a lot of new relationships going on with people who are graduating, who are retraining and early on in their career. So from that side, it's great, and obviously a great sort of place for you to find a mentor as well. So yeah, that's it from me. So I'm happy to take any questions or anything now. I'll just switch off my screen sharing if I can.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia. Fantastic presentation. Thanks
very much. Yeah, any questions at all?
So any questions for Olivia, please ask away, or write in the messages, or ask later on as well. So the choice, the decision is entirely yours. Yeah. So with that mentoring, sorry, after you, Ruby.
Yeah, it was just a very, very small question. I'm just interested, because we focus on the positives all the time in mentoring, and I like the fact that you did that complete pivot with your mentor to go back to your values and, you know, what you stood for, which is humongously important. What do you see, or what have you experienced sometimes where mentoring doesn't work? You know, there are some, and what are the instances that have caused it not to work so well? Is it a match that's not right? Any experience of that you've seen through mentoring?
Yeah, so I think from my not too much experience personally, but I think part of it is that initial matching thing. And just, I think what really helps is if you can in that initial matching stage, if you can relate to the person that you're with, and there's almost a sort of an unspoken chemistry, if you like, between people that is very hard to put your finger on. But I guess part of it is about being able to relate to the person and yeah, just to gel in that sort of personal way as well, I think is really important, because it is quite you are in a way making yourself quite vulnerable in that relationship, like being very open about the things you don't know, about your weaknesses, about your, you know, very open about some of your shortcomings. And to be able, you have to be able to feel comfortable to do that with someone, I think. And that is quite a unique thing. Like, it's certainly not going to be, you know, everyone you come across you're going to feel like comfortable doing that with. So there definitely is something around that sort of, yeah, almost that unspoken chemistry that you have with someone that makes you feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable in that way.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thanks, Olivia.
Hi, Olivia. I have a quick question.
Hi.
Fergus here. Just to follow on from that, I was looking at your slide about the mentor experience you had, and it seemed like obviously a very positive experience. And you used some very good sort of frameworks for that around skills gap analysis and what have you. Did that come from the mentor, or did that come from you? Is there a mentoring framework that the BCS offers or advises? Because I have had some mentoring experiences now which aren't negative. I've liked the mentor themselves as a person, but I'm not really getting the outcomes I want. So I'm sort of a little bit a bit of a career lull at the moment. So I'm looking for some new direction myself, and I'm kind of looking for my mentors to provide that to me. So how much was that driven by you, and how much was driven by the mentor?
Yeah, so I think in that respect I was pretty fortunate, because my mentor that I had mentored people previous to me, and I think she was quite au fait with well, she had her way of sort of doing it, if you like, and it did work for me. But I can totally understand that, yeah, it's not that way for everyone. So I did have an element of trust, because like I said at the beginning, I wasn't necessarily expecting us to strip all this stuff away right at the beginning and go back to basics. And I was sort of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this, but I trust you that it's going to work in the end. And it was the right thing to do. But yeah, I guess in that respect, if I'd have had to have sort of taken the lead on it more myself, then I suppose I could have just done it on my own and maybe wouldn't have really needed someone, although there was the accountability aspect that I mentioned at the beginning. So I have have a look. I'm assuming you're a BCS member, but you might not be. But we've got the mentor handbook, and even though that's designed for mentors, or maybe you could sort of point your mentor towards that and have a look through and see if any of those resources will be useful to you. So there's things in there like a SWOT analysis to do on yourself, and a few other, I should remember because I created it, but there's a few resources in there at the back anyway, that might help you just set some targets and kind of reframe the conversation if you feel like it's sort of gone off on a tangent or in a way that's not too helpful to you. And the link for that is in the slides that Andy can share out at the end. Yeah.
With the slides, do you want me to share the link here for slides, or do you want me to?
Oh, you could do that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not a Zoom, I'm more a Teams person, so I'm not too confident on how we do things in Zoom. That would be great.
Yeah, I've got your slides, so I can share them. I can share them now if you like. So
yeah, that would be great.
Just going to do that. But I do have a question for you as well. So I was going to say, with mentoring, have you ever been in a position where you feel that you may not be the best person to mentor somebody? Because I've been in that position before, and would you know how to address that, you know, whilst being professional, but also, you know, being you know, like honest at the same time? Because if I'm mentoring somebody, I don't want to sort of set them up to, you know, that I can't really offer them that much, but I'd rather be, you know, professional or honest about it, or give some constructive guidance. So how do you address that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I think we probably all as mentors sort of have our doubts at times of like, oh, am I really actually providing value to this person, and is it useful? And I mean, from the example that I gave when I was mentoring the young person, there were times when obviously part of my role and my end of the bargain for that relationship was to be a dependable, reliable person and turn up on time and do exactly what I was gonna what I said I would do. And there were times where she didn't keep up her sort of end of the bargain. As you can imagine, 16-year-olds committing to something every week for a year is a really, really big commitment. And so there were times when she didn't uphold her end of the bargain so much, and a couple of times in a row sort of thing. And I started to think, oh, you know, it maybe is this not the right thing, or and so there was an element of sort of just persistence, and you know, I'll do what I said I'd do, and if it turns out that it's not working, then that's fine. And it was just a little bit of a blip, but I think it's important to sort of just be upfront and honest and say, you know, as a mentor as well as a mentee, you know, we have our doubts about whether sometimes something's working, or, and so, you know, tell me if you think that there's something that you want to do differently. Or, and I think as Fergus said, you know, if it's not working, then perhaps it's a two-way street of you sharing suggestions of things that you could do differently and changes that you could make. Or yeah, ultimately, if you try a few different strategies and it's not working, to just be honest about it, because someone out there will be the right person. And so it's better to kind of be honest and upfront. If a relationship's fundamentally not working, then it frees both of you up to go and do great work with other people.
Thank you.
No problem.
Cool. Does anyone else have any further questions for Olivia at this stage at all? Okie dokie. So we next have Sophie as well. So Sophie, thank you again for coming to deliver your experiences in your talk as well. And now the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, I have to apologise. I don't have any slides or a presentation to give. I'm just going to talk about the Sheffield Digital Mentoring Scheme. A quick overview is that it only launched in earnest a couple of months ago. It's been a long time in the making, maybe 6 months or so of kind of planning. And then we opened it up, did some publicity, and put forms online so that people could start signing up. And then last month, we started finally matching mentors to mentees. And the whole aim of it, where it came from, was that Sheffield Digital is a not-for-profit organisation, and a lot of its funding comes from memberships from companies and from individual people in the community. And it relies very heavily on that. So we wanted to find a way that we could maybe try and get more people to sign up as individual users, members. And we also wanted to start providing a bit more value to the people who had already paid up as individual members. So we did some canvassing, talked to people who were already members, and then people who were more active in the community on Slack and on social media who weren't members already, to try and find out what it was that they'd maybe like to see that might encourage them to sign up, and what members would find useful. And because it's a citywide organization that kind of just focuses on tech, digital, and the creative industries in Sheffield and the surrounding area, there's a very broad range of people who are signed up to our communications, who, you know, the interests and the channels that we have on Slack there are more channels than you could count, because it covers everything from InfoSec to WordPress developers to creative digital marketers. And we thought that creating a mentoring scheme for people in the city, or people who work remotely and have ties to the city who are still interested in the things that are going on here, we thought creating a mentoring scheme for them would kind of maybe help people network within the city, especially during the pandemic, because people were saying that it'd suddenly become a lot harder for them to progress in their careers, for them to go to events and network and find out about possible career changes. So we thought, this is great. This is something you can do online, and then when things open up again, people can start doing it in person. And we wanted to get away from the idea of mentoring being this very kind of hierarchical thing, which it can be. And, if a lot of people find that when they've been mentored within their current company and their current role, quite often you're paired up with the person directly above you, maybe not, in your team, but somebody who is in the role that you would progress to. So we wanted to get away from that. And a lot of the way we talked about it was that it's just, if you're looking for a way to grow or a way to develop yourself professionally or personally, then you could sign up, just in the form, say what you're hoping to work on, and the mentors as well could sign up, and we asked them for information on their current role and what they'd done previously, but we also asked them, what are the specific skills, experiences, and knowledge that you'd like to share with people? It doesn't have to be to do with your current role. And so we've got, there's been a really, really good take up. We've got more mentors than mentees, which means that for some of the people who have signed up as mentees, we've been able to pair them up with multiple mentors to cover, because people have, it's not necessarily one specific area they want to focus on. So we've tried to match them up to best fit their needs. And if that means involving two completely different mentors, then we've done that. And we've got CTOs and COOs and people who have been on boards for great multinational panels. They're signed up, and some of them have been paired up with people who are at the very start of their career, or people who are just looking to make a career change and don't actually really know what they want to do yet. So we've managed to get away from the very strict hierarchy, because I think partly because it's not focused, it's not within one company, it's not focused, there's not a specific goal in mind for the mentoring scheme. It is just purely career development across tech, digital, and the creative industries. And I think it's working pretty well. I mean, it's in the early stages. It's been running for a month now. There's a lot of feedback that I need to get. And as this is the first cohort, obviously there's going to be a lot of improvements for future ones. But we're trying to keep it quite informal, which seems to be the preference for, I don't know if it's maybe the people of Sheffield, but there's a very relaxed and laid back approach to things. So we're keeping it very light and informal and letting them structure and kind of figure out the process as a pair, the mentor and the mentee. It's really up to them to decide how they're going to run it for themselves. So we want to kind of maintain that freedom, but at the same time, figure out better ways that we can support them. Currently, it's just semi-regular kind of check-ins to make sure that mentors are actually hearing back from their mentees, which, is, I think, quite a worrying thing for mentors. I think when I first set up the mentoring scheme, I was thinking that the mentees would be the ones that I'd have to support more or check in with more. But actually, I think mentors put quite a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect. And if they stop hearing back from a mentee, then it's quite worrying for them. So I think something that I'm going to look to put into place very shortly is kind of a closed group for the mentors who are taking part in this scheme, so that they can talk amongst themselves, because they don't know each other as yet. It's citywide, so they don't know who each other are. And I think trying to keep it informal, but making sure that there's networking going on between mentors and mentees, but then also amongst the mentors themselves, and also for the mentees, so they can all share ideas and then maybe figure out what they want to, I take ideas from each other. So it's trying to be a very collaborative approach, but also relaxed at the same time. But yeah, that's, like I said, it's a short talk, mostly because it's very young and still growing. But if anybody has any questions about it, or suggestions, I'd be very, very glad for suggestions at this point. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you for a fantastic presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Sophie at the moment? Sophie at the moment. There's one question here in the chat for Mikey. When an employee is coming to the end of their working life and heading towards retirement, how would you approach this as a mentor to help the mentee? For example, when is the right time to reduce workloads?
Is that directed at me?
Or we can ask that question towards the end of the talk. Not sure who it's directed for.
I would say somebody who's been a mentor before. I might not be particularly great at answering that question.
I have a quick question, Sophie. It's Sheffield Digital. Is it open to everyone, or is there a special rate for Sheffield residents, which I am? I'm actually
So the individual membership is £5 a month or £60 for the year. So we think it's a really reasonable price. There are benefits in addition to the mentoring scheme, which I can share with people via links if they want to connect with me afterwards, or you can find it on the website. There isn't a discount for Sheffield residents, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd get it for myself as well. But yeah, I mean, there's corporate memberships as well, but depending on the size of the company, it ranges as well. So if, for example, you were running a micro business, or you're like a solo, a self-employed person, then it's a lot cheaper to get the corporate membership that way, but not as cheap as getting the individual membership.
And did you say you'd launched this recently, so effectively under COVID quarantine? So
yeah,
being Sheffield area, that there would be on the other side of this some kind of actual in real life get together?
Yeah, so we started doing the research for it last year in the middle of the pandemic, maybe at its worst, and we finally launched it a couple of months ago. There's blog posts on the Sheffield Digital website and links to the forums and the information resources we gave out to people. I know that there are some mentor and mentee pairings. It's still open for people to sign up, by the way. We're still getting sign-ups and matching them. But some mentors and mentees have already met up in person. Some are preferring to keep it virtual online. I suspect that some will keep it virtual no matter what. But I think some are very eager to get face-to-face. And then our plan is maybe at the end of this cohort, kind of around the end of the year, is to try and organize a meetup in-person event for people who have taken part in the scheme to talk about what they learned and what they gained from it. And the aim with that is to, first of all, get not only the people who have taken part in the scheme together, but also just open it up to the city for anybody who's interested in career change or networking or mentoring. Get them all together, and also make it an opportunity for the people who have been mentored and who have mentored themselves to kind of maybe up their profile, just get their name out there as somebody that has taken part in this scheme. So we're hoping to get something very public and in person at some point in the future.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks.
I've got a question for you, Sophie.
Sure.
I was going to ask, what was the inspiration behind the mentoring program again, and how do you see it developing say a year from now or 2 years from now, if that's a reasonable if that's reasonable to sort of, you know, sort of, yeah, if it's reasonable to say.
So the kind of motivation, the inspiration behind it was that from the virtual events we were running for people, because there are a lot of meetups that were happening in Sheffield before this, as there are in a lot of the kind of big tech cities. We were finding people coming online to events and just really quite sad about the lack of networking and the fact that they couldn't meet new people anymore. So we wanted to kind of address that and find a way to allow people to network still virtually if they needed to, but also we wanted to just bring a bit more value to our individual members. So anybody can sign up as a mentor. You don't have to be a paid individual member, but at the moment only paid members can be a mentee. And that is to try and give some more value to the people who are paying to support the organization. And you know, we've been talking to them a lot, and a lot of the people who sign up as individual members are people who are looking to maybe career change. There's a lot of people who don't have a tech background but are looking to get into it. So we've got a lot of people who have come from, I don't know, very admin backgrounds, but now they're looking at building an app and they've been dabbling in it themselves, and finally they want to get more involved in the tech community. So we've got a lot of people doing that. We've got a lot of people kind of changing careers from like teachers going into game developers, all those sorts of things. So it was a case of trying to find something that gives value to all of those different types of people, which is quite difficult. But we thought this was kind of the best way. And in terms of how I envisage it in 1 or 2 years' time, I think my next goals are to create an area of the Sheffield Digital site that members can log into. And like with the BCS mentoring scheme, kind of look at a list of mentors that are available and just see what's out there. We do have because the mentoring scheme has been supported by the Sheffield Women in Tech group, there is an aspect of our scheme which is people can kind of specify what genders of mentor and mentee that they're happy to work with. You know, we really want to keep that in place. So having something like an area of a site that people can go into with filters and things like that would just be really helpful, I think, in terms of a management point of view, but also for people who want to look for a new mentor. So yeah, having a space on the site, but also creating regular meetups for people who are taking part, potentially some that are just workshop events for the people who are taking part in the scheme, but then also other ones for people to showcase what they're doing to the community, like on a larger scale. So I think those are my main aims at the moment.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone have any further questions for Sophie at this stage at all? Cool, no problem. So, all three of the presentations, Ruby and Livia and Sophie, have been absolutely fantastic. And now I'm going to talk about my experiences in mentoring as well, both from being mentored and as a mentee. So, just going to share the screen. So hopefully, my talk will be as good as all of you three as well. So, my turn to take virtual. And here we go with. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. That's good stuff. So yeah. So I'm going to talk about my adventures in mentoring. So I was mentored, and I've also mentored people as well from different parts of my career. So at the early stages of my career, I was actually working I was actually at university, and whilst I was at university, I undertook an industrial placement year at Total Systems PLC down in London as well. So that was an interesting year as well, where I got to develop, test and design software for the insurance sector, which was quite an interesting area to look at. So during the year, we had mentors. So when we joined the company as students, I took a role as a trainee programmer as well. So I was allocated a couple of mentors within the business, rotating mentors throughout different stages of the year to help me develop certain skills. So we had mentors for areas like programming, using a database programming language called Progress 4th Generation. I also had a professional mentor as well who helped with writing things like design specifications, how to write effective test strategies to test either the software which I'd developed or which was developed by a colleague as well, and how to actually plan what you're actually going to program before you actually coded it as well. So that was interesting. That helped me my career because I had a better understanding of how the principles I'd learned about software development could be used in a career, how I'd actually need to think about the career, the software I was developing before actually developing it. After graduating from university, I undertook a graduate scheme with EDS, which then was acquired by Hewlett Packard. So when I started my career at EDS, I was assigned a buddy mentor, somebody who had actually introduced me about the company, asked how I was. I could have chats about how I was feeling with EDS and Hewlett Packard, and what different roles were available. I also had a technical mentor who, after I joined EDS for a while, where I learned about the different areas of which roles I was working on. So when I was doing programming using Power Build, I had a technical mentor to help understand the code. I had a technical mentor for using a software support system and for using commands like SQL commands and Linux commands, and using a communication software to develop data mapping software as well, to help me learn how to create data mappings for the industry which I was working in. I also had a professional mentor which helped develop key skills like communication, team working, problem solving as well, for different problems which we may be faced or which we needed to solve whilst working on different projects and in different industries within EDS. So mentoring helped me develop, for example, different programming language. I did some testing on a Ministry of Defence web-based system for training candidates into the armed forces. So I had a mentor for somebody to help write the test cases, think about how I would test specific areas of the software, which was fun. With working at EDS and Hewlett Packard, I had mixed feelings about some roles it did. So I was a mentor as well, so I wanted to give my mentees as well a positive experience and something to inspire them to develop themselves. So on the graduate scheme at EDS and Hewlett Packard, I acted as buddy mentor for mentees who had joined the company. So I'd ask them how they were, take them out for a coffee, have a chat with them, ask them how they were. I also gave them advice about how they could develop themselves while they're working within the role and within the company as well. I also acted as a technical mentor as well, so showing them how the systems worked, and if I was supporting a system or developing a system or coding a system, how specific problems could be solved as well, and how to update company team wikis as well whenever they needed to be updated as well, making sure that they were fully fully trained on the systems as well. I was also a professional mentor as well by encouraging them to develop key skills like team working, the problem solving, also having skills like empathy and understanding as well, and introducing them to say the client actually knew who they were as well, so they could develop a working rapport as well. I also used to take some mentees to British Computer Society events down in Oxford as well, for example, at the universities, or visiting the Sophos buildings as well. And we used to have a talk about software testing as well each year, which was pretty interesting as well. And that gave them more of an insight into some of the different possibilities that were available for them as well. I initially wanted to be a software developer years ago after graduating from university. And whilst at EDS and Hewlett Packard, I had some experience in programming, although some of the experience was limited, as I struggled with programming some more difficult areas. I also did a number of secondment roles as well, which I didn't mind, but my heart wasn't actually in it. So I thought that I'd be safe there as well, and that my career was going to be a project support one. However, in 2013, 10 years out, I was hit with redundancy. So it was a difficult time. However, I decided to use this time for an advantage, to decide what I really wanted to do and what my strengths were as well. And networking events, for example, the Ministry of Testing networking events in Yorkshire, and found that testing was where the strongest areas were. I actually really enjoyed the events as well, and I felt that testing would be an area which I could develop a career in. I love being creative, and if anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very, very creative person. So after attending some networking events and gaining the ICTQB qualification, I decided to become a tester. So one of the best decisions I've ever made, never looked back. And for me, it opened a lot of doors of how I could develop myself. I don't even think I would have done the public speaking, which I do now, if I hadn't been a tester. So I've got that to thank for that as well. So I wanted to give something back to the community. I wanted to help mentor other people as well, developing careers, specifically as software testers. So I started using the BCS mentoring tool in 2015, 2016, and was assigned different mentees as well from all walks of life, for people who wanted to change careers in software testing. I had somebody who had a PhD in geology, who was interested in being a tester as well. So I started mentoring them and giving them advice about how to develop their skills as a tester. I also started emails and telephone and online chats as well, as to mentor people, for example, how they can update their CV to tailor themselves for a testing role. When they started as a tester, how they can develop specific areas of testing, like exploratory testing, manual testing, also cross-browser testing as well. I've also mentored people outside the BCS as well, where I've given them the guidance of how to test within how to test, and what to look for when, say, writing bugs, writing test scripts. What I've not done is given them a set way of doing that, because every tester is different. And although they're learning from me by me mentoring them, I'm actually also learning from them, and seeing them develop as well helps me to sort of learn how to tailor my mentoring towards them as well, and how I can help them further going forward. So I've also been on the BCS mentoring tool as well, and I found it useful. I also think as well that for finding mentors or mentees, it's also been useful for me as well. So when you join, so this is a tool which BCS members have access to as well when you log on to the main BCS website. So you can register yourself as a mentor or a mentee, or both if you like. So here is an example of someone here who has said that they're happy to look for somebody who's looking to develop their skills in the IT industry. They're happy to mentor them as well. You can also update what kind of meetings you want, whether it's face-to-face, which not really possible at the moment, online meetings, telephone or email meetings as well, and how often the meetings take place, and where in the UK that you'd like meetings, if you'd like to meet up as well. You can also use the BCS mentoring tool to search for potential mentors or mentees as well. And that's got a good set of selections. For example, if you want, for looking at different industries, for example, if you're wanting to get more information about a specific industry like defence or aerospace, for example, there's mentees with that specific area as well. So as a rule of thumb, where possible, I would look for a mentor who has got the experience I needed. So if I wanted to learn more about load or performance testing or penetration testing or automated testing for myself, I'd look for a mentor within those fields as well, who could give me advice, who could give me guidance, who could also suggest a few tools which I could use, for example, of how I could develop myself. Once you've identified a mentor or even a mentee, feel free to reach out, send them an introduction email to say who you are, what kind of experience or what kind of experience you're looking to develop yourself in as well, so that they can tailor the experience to your needs. Also, you can do the same if you're happy to mentor people as well, if you're looking to reach out to mentees as well to help them develop specific skills as well. Remember as well that by asking as well, you're increasing your chances of developing yourself, and most mentors will usually say yes. If the mentor will say no, they'll probably provide a good reason for doing so. However, they'll give advice on where to look further as well. So I hope that I've been a good mentor to my mentees so far as well. I don't think I'm perfect, and I've still got a long way to go before I'm even at a stage where I feel that I want to be. However, I believe that the traits of a good mentor, and I'll aspire to these traits as well. From my understanding, a good mentor will motivate their mentees by encouraging them to reach their potential, by giving them activities and sort of stretch projects to help stretch them as well, taking them outside their comfort zone. However, it will help them to grow. Also inspiring people as well. So I was inspired by a mentor who I was mentored by when I was doing public speaking as well. So I was on a mentoring program by Specialist Interest Group in Software Testing back in 2016, where I was mentored by a really good public speaker who had experience in automated testing. She helped me to develop my public speaking into a wider audience, which I actually delivered a talk at the SIGIST conference back in December 2016 in London, which put me outside my comfort zone. But she gave me advice and guidance as to how I could develop myself and improve my presentation so that it was suitable for a national audience. direction as well. So I'll provide my mentees with direction as to how they can develop their career. So if they're wanting to look for a testing role, updating their CV, for example, giving advice about how they can actually develop specific areas of software testing, looking at other avenues like exploratory testing, for example, and giving them advice on CVs, what to put in a covering letter, what questions to also ask at an interview as well to increases their chance of getting a role and developing themselves. I'll also expose my mentees as well to different skills. For example, I've exposed people to skills like soft structured query database languages, also other sort of areas of testing, for example, developing test scripts, writing bugs as well, and getting them used to testing, say, a web-based system and seeing what they find with it, what issues they find with it as well, and reporting them as well. I'll also support my mentees as well as much as possible by encouraging them if they're finding things difficult, or if they're feeling like giving up, encouraging them to persevere and keep going, and reminding them of what they've achieved so far as well. I'll also set some sort of goals as well for them as well, which my mentors before me have set goals for me as well to help me stretch myself, help me achieve achievable, attainable, realistic, and review the progress against goals and hopefully meet them as well. So for anyone who's looking for a mentor or mentee, I believe it's a two-way relationship, and it's better if the mentor and mentee relationship will work in the long term. But if I'm looking for a mentor, first of all, I've got to respect them. If I've got absolutely no respect for somebody who's mentoring me, then I don't believe that there's any point in actually being mentored by them, because you're not actually going to be inspired by them or encouraged by them. I'd look for somebody who's in an area or a career path, either at a similar level to what I am now or a higher level as well, where I can actually develop some skills in certain areas like penetration testing or automated testing, for example. Or if I'm looking to develop my experience in a programming language like JavaScript, for example, looking at who's walked that path before me and how I can learn from them. I'd also look at the experience as well from somebody as well to see how I can learn from them as well, what experience they can also pass on to me, which I can tap into. And I'd like I'd look for somebody who's supportive and gives constructive feedback where necessary as well. So somebody that I can actually feel who's nurturing and who's guiding me and giving me advice and guidance and helping to review my progress as well at regular intervals where possible. What I would look for in a mentee is their learning and what they need to learn as well, and how I can help them develop their skills as well. I'd also look at their aspirations as well and how I can tailor what I can do as a mentor to help them grow and develop. I'd also look for a reasonable level of commitment. I'm not saying sort of everyday commitment, but usually sort of like a week or a fortnight where we sort of check in with each other. I'll give them advice and guidance, and I'll help them develop as well. A mentor-mentee relationship is a 50-50 as well, where both parties working together develop the mentees, and the mentor also grows as well. Also, I'd look for a mentee who's open about their career path and seeing what areas their career path can actually open up for them. So as a tester myself, 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't have even heard of some areas like exploratory testing or sort of like security load-based testing as well. But since being a tester, it's opened my eyes to a lot of the roles and a lot of the possibilities and how I can actually develop myself as a tester as well. So finally, I'd like to say that mentoring opens path, and from seeing the different talks tonight and my talk as well, I hope it's been useful, and I hope it's encouraged you all to, or some of you, to actually look at mentoring to help develop yourselves and your careers as well. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, so here's my LinkedIn chat as well, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you all this evening as well. So thank you very much all for attending, and I hope my presentation, I hope to speak to you all soon. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you. Yep. So I'm going to open the floor to questions now from myself. So if anybody's got any questions for me, feel free to ask away. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah. We hear you.
Cool.
Shall I go first, Andy, and ask you a small question?
Can do, yes, of course can.
Okay. I liked the fact that you also tried buddying, mentoring, the buddy relationship, and that's really, I personally, from my own comment here, is I find that so important when you've got new people into a company that need to orientate themselves, that need to know where they need to go, who they need to speak to, etc. So buddy schemes, as though we don't mention much about them, they are very, very important as well, the buddy schemes. And you were that go-to person for them. They felt trusted, they could feel as though you're dependable, you can help them technically as well, and where to go. So I think I'm just going to make a point that it's very important to also have buddy schemes as well, in especially companies.
Definitely, thank you. I mean, for example, when people had joined EDS and Hewlett Packard, you had people, for example, who had travelled, who'd sort of relocated to a different area of the country to start the role as well. So things like that, for example, even giving them advice on, sort of like where to look for, what's around the local area as well. That was also helpful as well, just that they were a little more familiar with the area as well. Thank you.
I was just thinking how great the buddying system was myself, actually. We don't have that officially at my organisation, but I realised I've been doing it accidentally. I work in a higher education organisation. And we had a very high turnover of academic staff teaching in languages and linguistics, and I've taken probably about 6 or 7 under my wing when they first arrived and helped them around. I didn't realise that was what I was doing, so I'll put that on my CV, I think.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I wish my organisation did that, actually. It'd be great.
I mean, has anyone else had some sort of budgeting systems for their workplaces, anything like that at all? Just out of curiosity, really.
Yeah, we do at BCS, and actually it's nothing very formal. So it's sort of, when you've got a new starter in the team or whatever, to just make sure that they do have a named person that they can go to check just the basics of, any problems with their hardware, their laptop, or, where the IT, how to contact IT, or you know, where to find some food, or, you know, just that sort of thing. But actually, after what you were saying as well, Fergus, is I think it is really important, and maybe there is a way to just write, you know, a sort of few bullet points of a sort of a buddy, top 10 things to do as a buddy or something like that, so that it is a little bit more concrete and encourage people to kind of take on that role, because it is very loose, as in we do have it, but I don't think there's any set sort of guidelines or anything. You know, I've been a buddy for someone new before, and so I was like, well, I'll just use my common sense as to the kind of things that I'll probably need to tell them or show them, and you know, they might be not too comfortable to ask if they're new and a bit not confident and stuff. But I think, yeah, maybe just something simple is like, okay, the buddy is a named person and these are the types of things that you might do, and just share that across the organization would probably be quite helpful, actually.
Yeah, I'd agree, Olivia. When I started in the dim and distant past, when I first started my working career at BT, I had a buddy, and it was good because it was that go-to person that you could feel trusted, and it was definitely a difference to a mentor. I found that you didn't feel as though there was that hierarchy that Sophie talks about. It was the idea that it was very informal. It was the idea that you've orientated yourself. You felt a lot more comfortable to be able to know things, where things were, who was who, as I say. And I think there was nothing written down. I think we just had a few slides that said, this is your buddy, they will do this, you can go to them for that. And it just grew from there. And it was really good. And I think with the advent of company social media, it's a lot more easier, because you can find people, like in Vodafone, we have a youth network where the young grads go, where the interns, the placement students all get together. And there's a lot more of this get together and chatting online. And I think that's great. I wish it had been around in my day.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think as well, it also helps as well to sort of settle in a bit more as well. And if it feels like a little daunting, because when you're first starting out in a really, really big multinational offices around the world kind of place, it feels a little daunting. So having somebody just who you can go to, it helps you feel, you know, more at ease really as well. It helps you to sort of settle in, you know, pretty, you know, easier than what you would do without it, really. So, does anybody have any questions for any of us at all, or anything they'd like to anything they'd like to mention at this point at all?
Andrew, there's an interesting question that's come up from Alan on the chat, by the way, about 360-degree feedback.
Okay. So, any pointers for getting buy-in from top management as feedback? So Alan sent a good question in. So 360 feedback helps mentor and mentees. Any pointers to getting buy-in from the top management as feedback can be taken in negative contexts? How to avoid this? So trying to think.
I might jump in on this one,
Okay,
not from any place of sort of strong experience, but I've just sent out a few 360s actually for the career development meeting that I had yesterday that I mentioned in my presentation. And I think is something that I guess, yeah, when you're doing it, obviously, you know, you might come across some constructive feedback, which, as you say, Alan, it could be taken in a negative context by management. I think there's kind of two things to it. And one is sort of explaining that feedback in the context of the project you'd worked on, you know, and give a bit of background as to why that person might have given you that feedback. And then if you just approach it with a proactive kind of, and this is what I'm going to do about that. So let's say, for example, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's think. So perhaps so-and-so doesn't have great influencing skills, for example, then you can kind of say, well, you know, in this project, it was because I was trying to influence this stakeholder and I said this, and on reflection, you know, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. And so I realized where my weakness was there. And then, you know, I've looked at some strategies that I can do, or I'm going to work with so-and-so who's a great influencer in the business, and just what you're going to do about working on those points, I guess, rather than, yeah, because otherwise I guess the form lands on the management's desk and it's like so-and-so has not very good influencing skills, then yeah, that definitely could be taken in a negative context. So I guess it's about you kind of taking a positive and proactive approach to that piece of feedback, and then that hopefully will rub off on the people who are receiving it as well.
Cool.
Yeah, just to add and build on that, Olivia, is sometimes it can be to do with the culture of the organization as well. If I've been in situations where I know I don't fit into that culture, I'm going to mention the civil service where I once worked, and the 360-degree feedback was to me was always about, you're too of an extrovert, you're too much of the person that just says what they think some of the time. And I knew the civil service was going through reform anyway, and I was brought in to be someone different, etc. And so sometimes I used to think, yes, it was painful, that 360-degree feedback, and and it was being shown across all the people that my manager had gone to get the feedback from. So sometimes I'm thinking it is a culture thing as well. We shouldn't take 360-degree feedback as absolute sacrosanct. Sometimes it depends on the culture and the environment we're in as well. And and I was quite young and naive at the time. I think I took it badly and thought, well, this isn't the area I want to be in the end. So interesting question.
I was also going to add something to that as well. So I think that I've had 360 sort of like reviews as well from different colleagues when I had years ago when I worked in large corporation, where some feedback was positive, but how it's sort of like worded as well could also make a difference as well. I mean, if it's an area where it's like given like as a constructive feedback to help you develop in a constructive way, that I don't mind, that isn't too bad. But if it's sort of like worded in a negative way, that's when I have sort of taken it a bit personally as well. But I think as well, what I've learned from that as well is just learning that sometimes it's not all about everyone sort of saying how good at things or bad at things somebody is, but just like I say, it's the culture of the organisation, but and sort of like what's happening at the time as well is also something to be taken considered. But I think as well, something as well. Just trying to think. Yeah, just something where I'll sort of see what can I learn from it as well, and how can I get in better for next time as well. Sophie, do you have any thoughts on this at all, or?
Not particularly at the moment. It's something I'm actually trying to get to be a kind of a regular feature in my main workplace.
Yeah.
So listening to what you've all said, and especially the fact about it should be taken in context and maybe viewed through the lens of the company culture, or maybe I guess the personal values of the people that the feedback has come from. That's definitely something that I don't think I would have considered. If I were receiving it myself, I'd probably, my first instinct would be to assume that it's all correct and that I need to take it all on board. Not everyone's like that, I know, but I think there are a lot of people that would do that without actually stopping to think like, yeah, it's probably valid, but also analyze where it's come from.
Cool. I've got a couple of questions in, which I'll ask to the floor as well. So one person's asked, Mike's asked, when an employee is coming to the end of their working life and heading towards retirement, how would you approach this as a mentor to help the mentee? For example, is there a time to reduce workloads at all? So I'll throw that one out to the floor. For all.
It's not something I've really experienced. I guess it's quite a tricky situation because on the one hand, I don't know if you work at the same organisation, but on the one hand, you don't want to feel like there's not still a place for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they're extremely close to retirement, then I guess they would recognise that. But I suppose it's about, like we said at the beginning, it's kind of a two-way thing. So if they're still finding value in the mentor-mentee relationship and still want to pursue that relationship and go ahead with that, then I suppose then, as the mentor, you are still providing value to them, and they see that. In terms of advising them about reducing workloads and stuff, it's tricky because you don't want to feel like you're sort of pushing them out, like, time, you're ready to be going now. So perhaps just, raising the point in conversations when they're speaking about their work and stuff, and just bring it up as I recognize that you're, coming to the end of your career now, and, just kind of bring it up a bit. And if it's something that they don't seem to be keen to address, or that's not part of what they see that relationship being, then I suppose it's just what fits both of you, really. I would say, I guess if you're still having that mentor-mentee relationship, even though they're coming very close to the end of their career, they obviously do very much see the value in that, and obviously are getting something out of it. So
Yeah. I mean, I think as well it depends on the circumstances as well, and how and what and how people can actually what the situations are, but also the circumstances as well, because some people may think at a certain time it's best to retire, but other people still may want to work on as well. But it's also having a conversation, but also giving them guidance and advice as to how they want to, whether or not they wish to consider sort of like retiring, or sort of have a phased retirement to work shorter hours, or if they still wish to continue, and supporting them both with that as well, but also sort of reviewing sort of how things are with them as well, and taking their situation and concerns and into account as well. So that's my understanding. So I've got another couple of things. So one of them is saying thanks again for not a specific question, but more to make a statement. When I would like to pass on, is that regardless of gender, is that one of the main learnings I'll take from today, and what makes people tick, and what motivates them to take the extra step when the going gets tough. The ultimate aim is we should ultimately be aiming to be the best versions of ourselves. Totally agree. I mean, for myself, I am my own toughest critic, and I feel a lot of the time in the past, I feel like I've been a complete fraud as well, and I feel, sometimes I feel that I should be better than what I am now as well. But sometimes with the 360 reviews, you've got to need to take a step back and sort of say, what is it I've actually achieved? What has it I've actually done as well? I mean, for example, I think I could still be. There's a lot of ways I could improve as a chair as well, and I won't deny it. But at the same time as well, I think what things we've actually have achieved as well, especially during this pandemic as well. I've got another question. So, what areas of software developing would you like to do more of in the next few years? Future mentoring, do you see other companies could work in partnership with general office workers or externally, such as citizens advice bureaus or job centres? So that's a good question. So I'm going to throw that to the floor, and I'll answer that one myself as well. So I'll throw it to the floor first, and then I'll answer. Cool. So the mentoring I'd like to do in the future, I'm still happy to do the mentoring both with BCS and outside BCS as well, particularly in software testing. What I would like to do at some point in the future is I'm learning a few sort of like programming languages, for example. So I wouldn't mind mentoring people about that as well. I also mentor and give guidance to university people who are going to graduate from university to develop themselves in the IT industry as well. But I guess as well, I wouldn't keep a close mind. Happy with the BCS committee to actually organisations as well to help people, develop their careers and partner with other organisations where necessary to, help encourage people from all walks of life to develop careers. So I hope that's one thing that I'd like to do as well. So, and next year as well, we're hoping for our branch to work with a few sort of like local and regional organisations as well to help more people develop careers in the tech industry and just get the most out of it. Get the most out of using technology for the betterment of everybody and benefit of society, which is what the BCS is all about, really. Phew. So does anybody have any further questions at this point at all? Or any sort of like any comments, anything like that about tonight's event?
I was just going to make a very brief point about this thing called informal mentoring. We've talked about structure, we've talked about schemes that I've set up, but there is this wonderful thing Sophie touched on, informal mentoring, when the person is not your mentor and you are not their mentee, but you learn so much from them. And I once listened to an inspiring talk about how a person who's very senior was not a mentor or mentee, but advised us all to see people that we admire, even if it's the way they speak, it's the way they act, it's the way they do their software development. And we take parts of those people, and it's almost as though we're wearing a coat, a patchwork coat, and we take those people and put them onto our coat, our worn coat. And to me personally, I can tell you that apart from the F-Lane Enterprise program that I was involved in for lead mentoring, I've never been mentored formally or been a mentee. I've always done this thing called informal mentoring, because I think the people don't even know that I take parts of them and use them as being really good examples of how I can improve myself. And as they say, whether it's to do with technical design or whether it's to do with public speaking or something, I find that this informal, invisible mentoring, I'm going to call it, is so powerful and certainly assists me.
That's a really good point, actually. And I think now you've sort of mentioned it like that, I think, yeah, I do that as well. And I could even name you people who've influenced me in that way. And like you say, probably they don't even know. But I think that's a really good point to raise, actually. Yeah, there's loads of value in sort of that informal, invisible side as well. And we should definitely always be aware of those characteristics and traits and learnings that we take less formally. Yeah.
And we ourselves may be invisible mentors, not just invisible mentees as well. So I think that's, we always take little pieces of people we see. I think that's really good. I'm going to add that into my arsenal, my capability portfolio of how I can become a better person.
I've done that as well, not just only in IT, but also in other areas of life as well. So outside of work, I've actually, outside of work, for example, I've actually sort of like taught martial arts to different people from all walks of life. And for every martial arts instructor that I've been sort of taught by, I've taken a bit of them and tailored it into my own sort of like solution as well. So I've sort of like tailored my approach to, say, somebody who's just started for the first time and a little nervous, so like acting like as a buddy kind of to them, to somebody who wants a bit of a challenge and has done something like mixed martial arts and stuff like that, who wants a bit of a challenge, and I'll give them a bit more, you know, I'll mentor them as well and guide them, but sort of like give them a challenge where, like, each week where they can sort of like stretch themselves as well. So just like what Bruce Lee says as well, sort of use what's useful, leave out what's not useful, and sort of like include your own sort of like approach to the mix as well. So I hope that's the right quote. It's a similar quote, but something like that, where you can sort of tailor it to your own needs, your own sort of style. Cool. Yeah. So good question. So Matthew's got a good question. So would anyone recommend or not transitioning such an informal mentor and asking them to become more formal a mentor, or best leave it informal? So I'll throw that question to the floor.
Myself personally, I would leave it as informal. Because you don't know how they could act as a mentor, and that wonderful image of them has disappeared completely, and you think, I won't be taking anything away from them next time. So personally, I would leave it as very informal.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Yeah.
I'd leave as formal. Yeah. Does anyone have any more questions? Yeah. So does anybody have any more questions at this point, or shall I wrap it up for this evening and say thank you to everyone? Cool. Yep. So finally, I would like to say thank you everybody for attending our Adventures in Networking Adventures in Mentoring event run by the South Yorkshire BCS branch. I'd like to thank Sophie, Olivia and Ruby for such fantastic presentations as well. So really good to hear all of your presentations as well. We now do not have any we don't have any events now until September time, so we're having a little break for the moment, but we've got a really good, fantastic lineup in September event from September onwards. We've got a talk from we've got a penetration tester, Holly Grace Williams in October. We've got Shahzad in November. We've also got we've also got somebody talking on our September event as well. So usually the third month of the third Thursday of each month as well. So some more events to put in your diary. More details about them will be coming in due course as well. So finally, I'd like to say to all, thank you for all the support that you've given us all this year as well. It's been a tricky year, but we've sort of shown that we can still keep in touch and keep in contact as well. Make sure as well that you look after yourselves, and please please reach out if you need to as well. I'll be speaking to some of you from due course as well. So with BCS, let's keep working together and let's continue to be fantastic. So have a great evening, everybody. And if I don't hear from you beforehand, have a great weekend, and hopefully the weather's still nice as well, although I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like. But still, have a great weekend, everybody. Anyway.
Thanks very much, Andy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.